Oh, is this working? It's working now. Hello. Welcome back. Welcome back. I think we'll expect a few more people to come in over the next couple of minutes. I think everyone's still finishing off the fish and all that kind of stuff. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. So this morning was absolutely epic. We had a lot of really insightful talks from a lot of really insightful brands doing some really incredible stuff. And this afternoon, we're going to continue that. We've got an epic program lined up this afternoon. And our first speaker is, I mentioned before the break that he is a legend in this space, and he really is. There's a small handful of people who've been doing this for a very long time, and who've got the battle scars to prove it, and who are incredibly knowledgeable about this technology and about this landscape in general. And Paul is definitely one of those people. And he's actually flown out here in short notice from Ireland because we had a number of speakers pull out at the last minute, which is why I'm doing 2 talks today instead of 1. And Paul has thankfully to come and flew over to come and do this. So I really, really appreciate your time, Paul, and your efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Paul Sweeney, Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of Webio.
That's the go forward button?
Forward and back.
Okay, cheers. Hi, thanks for that glorious introduction. So Paul Sweeney, I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Webio. I'm just here today to talk about conversational messaging and how it's delivering today for credit and collections, because the focus of this part of the day is about impact, right? So as part of that, I'd just like to bring the attention to some of the companies that we do business with. So this is just part of establishing our bona fides. So we do conversational messaging for some of the biggest companies in the UK, so like companies like Very, Studio Retail in the retail sector. We do utilities like Anglian Water. We do very specialist credit and collections companies like Oplo. But mainly it's about this relationship between people, repayments, or people paying money in debt situations. And so because of this focus, we get like a lot of awards in our specific industry. So awards for innovation, for customer experience. But I'd like to draw your attention to 2 of the awards that we got in December for AI ethics. So one of them is for AI ethics, and then the other is for customer experience in a customer service environment. So again, this is just by way of setting a background. Why am I up here, and why maybe you should be listening to me or not? So the first thing I'd like to do is just focus a bit on the end customer, right? The end customer is somebody who is either paying late or falling into debt. And if you've ever been in that situation, what happens is you stop talking. You stop interacting. Research is there to show that people who are behind in their debt significantly will not fully reveal that to their partner. So you don't even tell the person that you're with, your cohabitee or your husband or wife, how bad it is. You definitely do not tell others in your social circle how bad it is. And I would posit that you don't even tell yourself, because your self-conversation isn't engaged with this. So you are not conversing. And because of that, your anxiety ramps up. It builds and builds and builds. You're in avoidance mode. You actually constrict your thinking. And the more it goes on, the more anxious you'll become. And that leads then to withdrawal. So you're anxious. Now you withdraw. So you withdraw from others, you withdraw from engagement, you withdraw from the problem. And of course what happens is that you're actually damaging yourself in this process. And you're not only getting more and more problems with that one company. If you owe money to one company, you owe it to 10. So you not only have to have this one difficult conversation with this one person on the end of a line, you have to have that conversation over and over again with 10 different companies. And if that's really bad, then that's traumatic, right? Now, all that is building up. The fines are building up, the debt is building up, the interest rate is building up, and you can see that this is slowly getting away from you. And that results in more shame, more feelings of you're being judged, more feelings that this is getting out of hand. And I was very interested to hear about the job search thing this morning. That just totally resonated as the design context, the person that you're dealing with on the other side. And they feel that if they told you how bad it really was, something really bad is going to happen. You're going to call for all the money back at once. But they cannot reveal their true situation to you as a company. And that's where it really spirals completely. Combined with issues of financial literacy, whether or not you're able to understand the situation you're in, you're able to understand the terms and conditions under which you took out these loans in the first place. And I think that's probably similar to the insurance kind of industry and healthcare and areas like that. Do people fully understand what they've done? Now, from the company side, it's a similar kind of problem. So post-COVID, we hear again from the examples this morning, people, and it happened with our customers, the clients, they shut off their phones because they just couldn't deal with them. Pushed everything to messaging, and volumes were ramping up and ramping up. So the first issue was ramping volume. Now, couple that with an evolving issue that's rolling out right now, which is I can't hire people to do this job. So you think you can have agents, you can throw agents at the problem, but you can't even hire them. And then you've got the scaling issue. So companies have to automate, automate, automate in the background. So automation is their next challenge. And then we've got the issue then of all these collections companies are being driven by their senior management to transform collections into digital collections. They don't want people to be getting letters. They don't want them to be on the phone. They want to be interacting digitally. How are they going to make that happen? Well, two parts of that, remote working and conversational messaging. And that really did work for a lot of our customers. Now, of course, once you have all these messages on these interactions on all your digital channels, you have to find out little things like who wants to pay, who can pay right now. Can you find that out quickly? Who will pay if you leave them alone? Maybe they'll just self-resolve, auto-resolve, figure out themselves. And here's a weird one for you. People who maybe shouldn't pay. So maybe you have someone here who's trying to pay that if you knew their full context, you'd say, wait on, you have more important bills than this. You should be paying some other bill rather than this bill. And the reason that you want to start thinking like that is because the mental and emotional states of your customers are often revealing various vulnerabilities that they have. Those vulnerabilities can be financial vulnerabilities, they can be psychological, they can be the fact that there's health issues in the family. And how do you discover, how do you find this out? Well, regulators are now saying it's up to you as a provider to figure out how you're sensing for these vulnerabilities, how are you surfacing them, how are you then acting on them and trying to get them resolved. And the quick tip here is the faster you can identify them, the quicker you can hand them over to a really well-trained individual who's trained for these particular types of situations. And I'll go off script for 1 second to say, we're speaking to one of the customers about this, and someone was in a bill payment routine and they kind of said, the person indicated that they were going to commit suicide on the chat. Like, that's a heavy situation for somebody to be in. So the final point about the company's challenges is the company also has to not only protect its own brand by doing the right thing and being compliant, etc., but people fall into debt and then come out of debt as the situation changes. You'd be surprised how many people are very, very marginal. And if you could just fix things for them for a little bit, they could get back on their feet, and then they'd be remaining good customers of yours for years to come. So the attitude of companies to their debt process and the credit and collections process maybe shouldn't be thrown over the wall straight away. It might be just deal with it a little bit and make that customer have a great experience that lasts a lifetime. And so the point is that conversational messaging does fit this space. We're doing this work today. So just a little bit about the Webio stack. Our approach to this over the last couple of years is we believe that the security, privacy, governance of the data the whole way through is of prime importance to our clients. It'll be of prime importance to financial services and utilities companies. So our view is we want everything in our own environment. And our vision for intelligent assistance is Every client will have their own intelligent assistant. It's trained on their data. All their data is trained against their own intelligent assistant AI, and they've got full visibility over of everything, all the way up, all the way down, throughout the whole stack, because we think you're going to need that. And so just the first thing about we often forget is, yeah, I used to be running product, and the amount of time it takes to get a good API up is incredible, right? It's just a huge burden to get a really great API up. And then you go out to customers, and you find that they really wanted it, but they can't actually get themselves organized to get the data to you. They need to do something like an Excel drop or a big Excel file over to you. Getting data, you can't have great conversations without great data. So where's the data coming from? So we help the customers get the data into the system in the first place. And then we have, as I said, our own specific WebioBot framework that we've built. Again, niched to our area so that it can handle all the various bits that they need to deal with. And maybe the bit that's most interesting to people today is the custom large language model. So we've built our own large language model focused on the fact that it's credit and collections type situation. So again, it's not your typical company, it's not your typical kind of architecture, but I just wanted to give you a view that's our view of the world. And we did that because the data journey is so important. Compliance is going to be head to tail all the way through AI. And there's some really interesting conversations last evening about traceability on everything, like how you label data, how that decision was made, who made that decision, when did they make it. It really goes all the way down the stack as to full visibility on decisions. And also we find that even though companies want to do this, the availability of their own staff to actually be freed up to do this, which is why maybe it was interesting to hear about the insurance case today, that it takes resource to get this done in a business, and not all the companies have the resources to do that, especially not the medium-tier businesses. So we have to do that for them. Now, just some examples, just to illustrate that point a little bit. I'd love to pay, but my wife is in hospital. Now, we've seen instances where you might parse that line and go, I'd love to pay, great. Off you go to a payment routine, fantastic. Second part of that sentence was more important than the first part. And then you have more context that you need on that. Why is that person in the hospital? Is it they're sick? Does someone in the family sick? Do they work in a hospital? Are they visiting someone? But you should have a follow-on question that probes a little bit on this. And if you find out something about it, be able to do something else about it. Like maybe you're dealing with a very serious situation there. I can't pay this. Just an example of, you could say that sentence, that little phrase, anywhere in a sequence. At the front of a conversation, it might mean, I don't have any funds, I have no money, I can't pay. It's like a fairly blunt statement and leads you down a certain path. At the end of a conversation, or towards the end of a conversation, if you say, I can't pay, it's probably something to do with the gateway isn't taking the money, you're getting an error message back on your credit card, or there's something not happening. They're not like getting the process of payment done. So where you are in the journey of the conversation matters. I'm just off on my holiday and don't have any money. And you might think to yourself, well, you shouldn't, what are you doing going on holidays when you owe money to all these people, you irresponsible adult, you. But in a credit and collections context, this meant a payment holiday. So they were given a payment holiday where they didn't have to pay this bill for a while, and the payment holiday's over, but they still don't have hours. So the follow-on question is probably something to do with, when do you think you'll have more hours? Or when do you think you'll be getting more income from another source, or another payment from another social security source that could go towards this payment? So the nuances of handling an interaction, even with little small text, you can see the contexts kind of spin out a little bit. So we're here just to, I think today's session, just to get a little bit on getting to value. Like, how do we get to value here? Sorry for the size of this text here. I should have specified that a little higher. But one example I have here of really, really simple is one of our clients kept on having a form fail because of a date. Like when do you want this to start from? What date would you like to start? And they gave him the format and they showed him how to fill in the date, but it kept on failing, right? It just kept on. There's a very high failure rate. Just by putting in an intent that could measure a date, so I'll pay next Friday, Friday the 30th of June, June the 30th, whatever it was, just the process of filling out that form was more successful. The tiniest one intent insertion into a form made a huge difference in the completion rate for them. So the example there is by way of saying you can build a number of intents that are useful for you and pull them out. Oh, sorry, not intents, entities. You can pull out the entities like numbers, dates, times. And as you start building the right collection for you, reviewing your conversations, figuring out what kind of data you need to be able to extract, just building up the entities list becomes really useful. And then you can start building custom entities. So your reference numbers for your customer ID number or your stock order or your policy number, just pulling out these details starts building kind of muscle for you. You start kind of having the basic elements for building more expansive processes. And so the more expansive processes there, again, sorry, apologies, it's hard to read this, is you can start chunking this. Now you might kind of think of it as templates, but they're really kind of meta processes like ID and V, identification and verification. An awful lot of these conversations have to start with identification and verification. Now if you can pull out a name, a date, an address, a number, you've pretty much all you need to run an identification and verification process. Now, if you are able to pull that data out the front, you can also use it later on in the conversation. And so by linking larger kind of concepts of conversation, you can push that data forward, not have to review, not have to re-ask customers for things. You have permissions passing through. But again, in particular environments, you can have things like policies on timeouts that you really want to closely manage, and that's maybe where a full stack solution comes in. So that kind of concept of long-term memory, long-term, short-term memory is really important. And I think in the example this morning, the name is after skipping me, but there's a great slide about getting from an agent to an intelligent agent to a person to an agent to an agent. So these Passover conversations are a really important part of any system, and figuring out when you should pass it over and back. So in the example where you might have a lengthy process, so an ID and V process is kind of relatively short, but you may figure that if someone's asking you for a particular amount of money, you're doing a lookup, you find out, they're asking for, let's say the balance is £100. They've offered £50. You do a lookup to see if that's an acceptable amount of money. The reading might come back and go, this person actually is now displaying signs of vulnerability, financial vulnerability. First step I want you to do here is to put them through, or offer them, a budgeting process. Now, if you're doing a one-to-one budgeting process between an agent and a person in debt, that takes the agent up to 40 minutes sometimes to do, right? It's a long time, costs a lot of money, and also you can't scale it. But you still need that information. So first of all, you hand over the conversation to the bot. The bot then presents various flows to them, collecting the money. Bottom line, you're going through a process collecting data and information, and normally companies only want one part of that, which is what is their disposable income at the end of the month. And if that number is not high enough, you have to put them through another process, a vulnerability process. But you got to get to that number. But of course, as we were learning from this morning as well, collecting all that information has other uses if you can figure out good ways to use that data. So that's an example here of what I just kind of went through here, is start small. All our customers start with small things. Then you start doing something a little bit more complicated. Then you start doing something a little bit more complicated. And what happens is, if you try and get and design a complex solution up front, you're going to fail. Because it's really hard to develop complex systems. But if you can do small things, step by step, layer by layer, bit by bit, and layer them one on the other, you get to the outcomes, right? You'll get the benefits. So you need to go on the journey to get to the value. And that's what we help our customers do. So the bottom line impacts, like we're here to talk about what we get. So 3 to 5x return on engagement. Okay, so you're getting 3-5 times engagement that you're getting without that solution. It is phenomenal. It's particularly good at very late stage collections. One of the things we're kind of really good at is very late stage where people have completely disengaged and you need to re-engage them. You use SMS to do that, and that's been very, very effective. Automation rates, as we were saying, automation is more and more important, and we're getting like up to 77% of the debt collection automated through messaging. I was a little bit kind of, 77 is a big number here, but I'm seeing similar type numbers in the other presentations this morning, so it kind of leads me to believe maybe that's kind of the target that everyone kind of should be aiming for. There's some of those, I think in that number, there's an interesting number on the agent-specific part of that conversation. So if you focus in on the human agent, 50% of their total conversations are now automated. So the conversations that they're managing, it's either automated before they get it, and then they can pass it off to an agent or an intelligent agent afterwards. And the payment uplift is like, how much more money are you collecting? It's something like 76%, right? It's a big uplift in the amount of money you're able to collect. And again, because I love conversations going back and forth among the presentations. The panel today, we're talking earlier about, there's a lot of technology to make that happen, but there's also some craft around making the technology, the conversation work. We went into a client and all we did for them was we changed the tone of their outbound message, right? No big technology, no big kind of interaction, cleverness. We changed the tone of the message and they got a 30% uplift in the messaging. And it was just moving from very formal, very stiff kind of historical language to friendly, inclusive, why don't you talk to us type phrasings. So I think there's still going to be stuff to be done in making the language more accessible to people. So just a little bit of closing about the LLMs. I think it's the topic du jour. We've spent kind of 2 years kind of building our own custom LLM, as I explained, to be able to understand exactly what's happening with our types of conversations in our industry. But I think that the concerns are going to remain around traceability, compliance, and what happens there. I think the failure rates, like when we talk about hallucinating responses or not being able to rely on a response, that's going to be fine for a lot of contexts. But you just have to, like if you're in financial services, the response you give just has to be correct. Like 1% on 100 million people is like a lot of people. So I think we're going to miss out a little bit on what the correct kind of level of accuracy should be. And so I think that the LLMs will handle a lot of your issues with multilingual. So we're already doing implementations on the same platform in Italy, in Greece, and other countries right now. I think that we'll have a lot of voice text input so that you can, Google Lens pointing at something and it tells you what it was. Like just the input mechanism is going to change over the next year, particularly with forms like your license, your passport identification. I know it's just going to get that really simple and at like nearly zero cost. So that's going to be a big issue. And I think it will evolve into enterprise grade solutions. So I kind of would leave you with the kind of tip that yes, there's a journey all the way through in layering this stuff in to make it effective and get value, but the next step is definitely going to be about large language models, training them, having custom models, and figuring out what your kind of new architecture looks like, because the world is kind of going to change in the next 18 months. So that's where I'll leave you. I hope that was some use to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so